The question is philosophy boring? As a matter of fact, a lot of people do find philosophy boring, about 66% do. But that's only because they associate philosophy with boring subjects. A lot of interesting topics in philosophy, and one of them that we are going to explore today is going to be time travel. Now, there are two types of time travel. When you travel from the present to the future, it's called forward time travel. And when you jump from the present to the past, it's called backwards time travel. Now let's take another look at forward time travel. Say it's the year 2021 and you come across a time machine, or for some reason you're given a time machine. You could travel from a city like this within minutes using your time machine to a city like this. For you, it would only be a couple of minutes, but for the rest of the world, it would maybe be 100 years or 150 years. This might seem interesting to us, quite interesting to us, but for philosophers, it's relatively simple and it does not interest them. What interests philosophers is traveling back in time, because they're interested in whether something is illogical, if it makes sense. So why would traveling back in time not make sense? One of the main issues with traveling back in time is called the grandfather paradox. Now on the left you have Charlie in 2021, and on the right you have Charlie's grandfather, who's still young, in 1961. If Charlie were to jump using his time machine back to 1961 where his grandfather was, and for whatever reason he was to willingly or accidentally kill his grandfather, there would be an issue. Now let's take a look at the family tree. This is Charlie's grandfather, Charlie's father, and Charlie. If Charlie's grandfather died before having any kids, it would mean that Charlie's father never existed. And if Charlie's father never existed, that means Charlie never existed. And if Charlie never existed, he could not have killed his grandfather, which means that his grandfather is still alive. But if his grandfather's alive, he would have his own family tree and Charlie would exist again. So this would create a paradox, something that would loop onto itself, and which is confusing. So it seems a bit illogical for something like this to actually exist. To understand that, let's take another case. You were given a time machine and a top secret mission, a classified one. Your mission was the assassination of Adolf Hitler. And say you had time to prepare yourself so that you could actually carry out an assassination. You would go and attack Hitler in Vienna in 1908 when he was still a struggling artist. So this was before Hitler did anything significant, before Hitler rose to power, before he joined the military, before he had a private army guarding himself. So he's quite vulnerable. So what would be the problem with this? It seems like a relatively noble act considering all of the things that Hitler has done. Now, the problem is that this is the information that you have on Hitler, considering newspapers, articles, books, study that people have done throughout history on Hitler. And this is the specific information that you are using. Hitler's early life, him being a failed artist in 1908 in Vienna. And if, say, you were able to go back to Vienna, you were able to find Hitler in a street and shoot him, and you were successfully able to shoot him and hit him, and he died. It would mean that Hitler died and did nothing significant, which would mean that the information on Hitler that the world has and that you would have in the future is absolutely nothing, because he died before doing anything significant. He did not rise to power. He did not commit the atrocities that he did onto the world. So you would know nothing about him. So if this cannot happen, what would happen? Hitler be invincible. What would happen is that your gun could jam, or Hitler would crouch, or any one of a billion accidents would happen, and none of them could be reasonable. Half of them would be absolutely and utterly ridiculous, like someone bumping into you and you missing, you falling down, slipping. After months of preparation, all it took was a slip, or a car crashing into you. But what would happen is, the end point is that Hitler would not die. Now let's take a look at history to understand this. Consider history as a solved puzzle, and each piece has its own particular place and importance. And if you were to change any piece or a portion of the puzzle would become incomplete and it would not make sense. Now, David Lewis, who is an important philosopher in this field, says that basically history exists as one. There is only one history and there is only one timeline. So essentially, nothing you do in the past will cause any change in our present. Now, we could discuss this further for hours, but since I must conclude, I'd like to say that the essence of philosophy is to question, to ponder, and to strive to answer these questions. So I would like to leave you with such a question. If you saw a glimpse of your future, do you think that you would have the power to change it?